Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. I'm Connor filling in for Alex again. Today, let's discuss the Big 12 championship between Iowa State and Arizona State. Both of these teams have had surprising seasons, at least according to most people. The Iowa State Cyclones have not really surprised me this year. This was actually a team that I had pegged to play in the Big 12 title during the summertime. I thought this team had a lot of upside this year, at least in comparison to recent Iowa State teams. And compared to a Big 12 now without Texas and Oklahoma. Arizona State, however, has very much surprised me and has been one of the most surprising teams in all of college football. The Sun Devils were a team that a lot of people had picked towards the very bottom of the Big 12, and pretty much every single preview magazine had Arizona State at like 14, 15. A lot of preview magazines had them at 16, dead last in the conference this year. But Arizona State, 10 regular season wins, 10-2 overall, and 7-2 in Big 12 play. And here they are in Arlington with the chance to make the college football playoff. And of course, the Cyclones, more people were discussing the Cyclones in a positive manner in the summertime. There's a few people who thought they were a dark horse contender for the conference, like myself. So it doesn't shock me to see the Cyclones in this position. Let's first discuss one of the nation's most surprising teams with the Sun Devils in regards to what they're going to be having on the field. I think it's very noteworthy that Arizona State's leading receiver by far, at that matter, Jordan Tyson, is not going to be available for this game. He's out for the remainder of the season. Tyson had about two and a half, maybe even close to three times as many receiving yards as every other receiver on the Arizona State roster. The next closest, the second best receiver in terms of stats for Arizona State this year, has 17 catches for not even 400 yards this year. The second leading pass catcher for Arizona State is a stud running back and Cam Scadaboo, who is going to be healthy for this game. He also, I thought, looked as healthy as he has looked this entire season last week during rivalry week against Arizona. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Cam Scadaboo, who's probably going to be getting the football even more in this game now without Tyson. By the way, Tyson is not just a tremendous receiver; he's also a really good downfield blocker. So that's a big time player for Arizona State that will not be available in the Big 12 championship. Now, Cam Scadaboo, again, he is going to be ready. He's going to be at full strength. Again, I think he looked better than he has in recent weeks. Last week against Arizona, I thought he looked as good as he has all season, and he's going to be going up against an Iowa State rushing defense that has not been great this year, and it hasn't really closed out the season particularly well. And I think a lot of that has to do with some injuries that Iowa State has sustained, especially in its front six this year, and more particularly along their defensive line. Now, the Iowa State secondary has been fantastic this year. So I really think this Big 12 title is going to come down to simply can Iowa State contain Cam Scadaboo? A little bit of a tongue twister there. And I think the Cyclones are certainly up for the challenge. And one other thing, so Arizona State's offense and Cam Scadaboo against the Iowa State rushing defense is the number one thing to look at in this game, especially now that Arizona State's not going to have their top receiver there. But Sun Devils are probably going to have another receiver step up. That's the way things normally work in these cases. But another thing that I'm really interested in seeing is this improved Arizona State defense against an Iowa State offense that I was very high on coming into the season. When you look at Iowa State, they normally churn out a pretty good running game, and that honestly hasn't even hit its ceiling this year. I don't think the Iowa State rushing attack has, because a running back that I was very high on coming into the season, in Abu Sama, he hasn't even been fully healthy this year, and he hasn't even been on the field as consistently as he was a season ago, especially down the stretch later towards the 2023 season. He hasn't been fully healthy this year again, but the Iowa State receiving core has been fantastic this year. I thought this was the most underrated receiving core coming into the season in the entire nation. And they have the only 1,000 yard receiver duo in the country in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. And again, both these guys have over 1,000 yards receiving. They are the only team in the nation with two 1,000 yard receivers. And so the Arizona State defense, which has played very well down the stretch, is going to have its hands full trying to stop this Iowa State passing attack. Iowa State has the best fourth down offense in the country. And I think a lot of that has to do with Iowa State pulling out some games, especially in October. It felt like whenever Iowa State needed that last drive to secure a victory, they got it. And that's because of these receivers for Iowa State, because defenses have to pick their poison when facing the Cyclones. Just imagine if Iowa State had their normal rushing attack. Imagine if Iowa State didn't have the injuries on the defensive line. I think there's a case to be made. Iowa State could be 11-1 or better right now, or maybe 12-0, and the only undefeated Big 12 team had Iowa State actually stayed healthy down the stretch. But I think the story of the Big 12 this year, and it's probably going to be this in the near future without Texas and Oklahoma, is that there's really not much difference among the teams. Iowa State, Arizona State, BYU, those teams all have really good records in one score games this season. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State, Utah, UCF, some of the more disappointing teams, not just in the Big 12, but really in the country, have a really bad record in one score games. So I think in the Big 12, and again, this is going to be the case moving forward, at least in the near future, with the format of the landscape of college football, I should say. The story of the Big 12 is which teams can win their one score games, because there's not a huge talent gap in the Big 12. And that's the case in this Big 12 championship. There's not really a talent gap. And that's the case for every single conference championship game this weekend, including the G5. There's not really that much of a talent gap with each individual game. We don't have Michigan favored over Iowa by 20. We don't have that team that got to its that got to its conference championship because of its schedule. They got there because they earned it. Or in the Big 12 case, they survived the chaos and they ended up having a winning record in one score games, which is again the case with both the Cyclones and the Sun Devils. So I'm expecting a close game, as we've seen in the Big 12 almost every single week this season, and I would expect nothing short but say a last drive of the game, or this game coming down to the very last drive. I expect nothing short of that in Arlington, Texas, this Saturday. Some people say the Big 12 championship is in Dallas. It's in Arlington. Okay, I'm a DFW native, so let's get that straight, okay? But anyways, I'm expecting a fantastic game, and I'm gonna go with Iowa State to pull off just a minor upset here. Again, I've been high on the Cyclones all season. I was very high on the Cyclones coming into the season in the summertime. I was discussing Iowa State a lot on my college football page, CFE Grind. So I'm going to go with the Cyclones to pull off a minor upset here and the Cyclones to get to the college football playoff. The Big 12 is only going to get one representative in the expanded playoff field. So I think the Cyclones are going to pull it off in what should be fantastic fashion down the stretch, and what should be a close game from start to finish. But again, the big things to take away in this game is the Iowa State running defense against Scadaboo, the running back for Arizona State, and then the Arizona State offense. Can they get other receivers involved? Can they make plays down the field? Because I know the Iowa State offense with Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Rocco Becht, a really underrated quarterback. I think they can make those plays down the stretch. So I'm going to go with the Cyclones in a really close game, say 23-20, to find a way to get a victory and ultimately get that one representative from the Big 12 to the college football playoff. Should be a fantastic game.